So I'm trying to experiment with doing more of these just like drive and talk videos, because I think I get too into like editing something and doing a really good job with it, or a medium job, and not actually like putting out videos that I want to put out when I have an idea. So I'm trying this just to see if I can make it work, and if I can, I can. I'm using a couple different ways to record audio, because honestly I don't know what's going to work that well when I put the top down. So we bought a Miata ND2. This is a 2020 Miata RF Grand Touring. We got it in June, and it's October now. July. We got it in July, and it's October now. So we've put about 1,800 miles on it so far. A couple long road trips, mostly just driving around town. It's kind of my wife's car. We didn't get it to really replace anything else. She's just always wanted one, and we sold the NA Miata that I got after the Spider. We sold it too quickly for her to really have fun with, and I didn't really want her to get an NA or an NB just for safety at this point. Like, I'd rather she get a more modern vehicle. So we looked around at ND1s and ND2s and decided on an ND2 for height reasons, which I will explain as I go here. The more we looked at ND1s and ND2s, it kind of became obvious that we were gonna have to get an ND2 because of like the tilt steering wheel and a few other things. Plus the tuned motor, I mean, from everything I've read, it was really the way to go. And I'd never driven an ND1, so I didn't really have a lot to compare it with, but an ND2, I mean, it's awesome. It's a Miata. I've driven NAs and NBs, never driven an NC, but this feels like a Miata. So I'm gonna go through it bit by bit. I don't know how long this video is gonna be. We'll just see what happens. So I'll start with probably one of the most important things, because it's the reason I'm titling this video this way, is because this is the information I was looking for when I was shopping for one of these. I am about 6'3". Depends on whether it's in the morning or the evening. And a lot of that height is in my torso. I have a 32-inch inseam, and shirts that fit me well are normally like 31 to 33 inches in length. So I'm, I guess, more square than your average tall person. I've got the torso of like a 6'6" person and the legs of a 6 foot or a 5'11" person. So because of that, fitting in cars is hard. Fitting in cars with a helmet's a lot harder. That's the main reason I got rid of the NA. But it can be legitimately difficult to have enough headroom. So this is in the RF with the top up. I've got the seat scooted all the way back. And then once you scoot it all the way back, I've leaned it as far back as I can. I don't feel like I'm really in a very reclined position, but it's moderately reclined. And I have enough headroom. I mean, if you see, my hair is literally skimming the roof, and I just got a haircut today. So if my hair is longer, then it's worse. So I'm not gonna say like I have a ton of room. And if you would be annoyed by your hair skimming the roof, then maybe this isn't the way to go. But it honestly doesn't bother me that much, unless I'm doing like a long road trip or something. And the trade-off is I get to drive a hardtop Miata, so I'm okay with it. But I'll go through the room. So starting out, if you don't have anything to compare against, in an NA and an NB Miata, I think they're ergonomically pretty similar for tall people. My knee would always be jammed between the steering wheel and the door. My other knee would be crammed underneath the dash. I would not be able to get to a good position with my head, like under the top. And I would normally be looking like above the windshield almost. Like at stoplights, I would always have to look above the windshield. On regular drives, it kind of felt like I was. And I know you can do like the foamectomy and everything, but I'll put a picture on screen of me sitting in my NA Miata on the floor. Like the seat is 100% removed, and I'm sitting on the floor with a helmet on, and I still don't quite have enough room. So I'd have to put a drop pan in the Miata, realistically. That's the only thing I'd be able to do in an NA to be able to race it comfortably. And on day-to-day driving, a really low seat would help a little bit, but still, any seat that would put me low enough to be comfortable would be a little bit too low for my wife, and she'd have to sit on a cushion, and they're just too small, NAs and NBs. And I can have fun driving them around on the road, just having fun, but I wouldn't really say either of them are big enough to enjoy long-term without extensive modification. So it's not that I'm opposed to the modification, it's just stock, the vehicle doesn't really fit. By comparison, I have plenty of footroom. I feel like I have enough footroom and legroom. It's almost the same as my Spider, And if you're not familiar with how much room an MR2 Spider has in the footwell, think of like a Porsche Boxster, a mid-engine or a rear-engine vehicle. Normally, even if the vehicle's smaller, there's lots of room up front just because of, you can package the car that way. So I have loads of room in this. Like the steering wheel is a great distance away. It has enough adjustments. I don't have that hard of a time getting into it, certainly not compared to the Spider or the Miata. And just the way they've packaged everything, like, I feel like I'm sitting in a larger car, a significantly larger car than an NA or an NB, even though the car really isn't. So I think that's amazing. I mean, I think that's pretty much the story of this car, is everything about this is amazing engineering. Yes, there's a few downsides, but come on, for a vehicle that starts in the mid-20s and you can option up to the mid-30s, it's amazing what they've managed to do with this thing. So if you're tall and you're considering one of these, don't just take my word for it, because, I'm sharing this just from my perspective, but I think if you're like 6'2", 6'3", or under, you probably have a decent shot at fitting. Of course, that depends on your weight and, how long you are in different proportions, because if I was literally an inch longer or taller or wider or whatever, in some proportions, I would have a much harder time fitting in here. Like, it happens to work really well for me, but honestly, I would rather that my legs were a little bit longer and my torso was a little bit shorter. So I'd fit better if that was the case for me. But I think if you're tall, you have a real shot. Just see if you can go sit in one and drive it, and see what that's like for you. So I'm gonna take the top down here in a minute. I just wanted to start out by talking through this. Now, obviously with the hard top up, yes, this feels not claustrophobic, but it feels like a very small car. I mean, I don't think it feels any smaller really than like a Corvette on the inside. It certainly does feel smaller than like a Mustang or a Camaro, a BRZ, cars like that. But if you're used to driving like a two-seater sports car, I don't think this is gonna feel that small on the inside. And then for someone like my wife, who's, about 5'7", it feels totally normal. Like, compared to the Miatas of previous generations, except the NC, this is a much roomier, more livable vehicle day to day. I guess before I take the top down, I should also talk about like ergonomics and features and everything. I think it's incredible how much they were able to fit into this vehicle at this price point and at this weight. Because you think of an NA Miata, the options that it had were like absolutely nothing, which is okay because it's just about having fun driving. But by comparison, this has, hold on. By comparison, this has Bose sound system, which it sounds okay, but Bose isn't even that great. It's just, people hear Bose sound system in a car, I think they expect more than they're actually going to get. And this is a kind of weak for a Bose sound system, in my opinion, but not bad for a convertible. But you get like Bose sound, you get navigation, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, heated seats, really good climate control. All the options are easy to get to. The storage is garbage, but you probably already knew that. Like, there is no glove box. It's just this cubby thing back here. And then, you're going to hit yourself on the armrest, or you can move them up here. And then in that case, no tall people can sit in the passenger seat. So that's pretty lacking. And of course, given the size of everything in the interior, they can't do like the big door pockets to fit water bottles and stuff like you would have in most modern vehicles. So definite downsides. But other than that, I mean, this has great climate control, good sound system, good navigation, everything's power, plenty of room. Like, the list just goes on and on and on. This is like a normal modern car that just happens to be a two-seater sports car that just happens to be pretty reasonably priced. I'll try to hit all the practical stuff before I take the top down. So if you're here for like a driving review, this is probably the most boring way to get into it. Sorry about that. But the ergonomics on the inside, that's what I was talking about. Like, the shifter's in the perfect position. Since it's rear-wheel drive, small little car, you're actually shifting the transmission. It's not cable operated, as far as I know. It feels great. We get in the mid-30s on the highway in miles per gallon. We've gotten almost 40 before. Around town, you're gonna get mid-20s, but honestly, who cares? It's a very fuel-efficient vehicle. There's quite a bit of drone on the highway, or not drone, but just tire hum, wind noise, whatever. It's not terrible, but it's a little convertible. Like, it's way better than the MR2 Spider for sure, but that thing like didn't even have mufflers, so I can't really compare the two of them. And yeah, it's quieter than a soft top Miata, but if you get this, you should know what you're getting. This should not be a surprise that this is what the vehicle's like, but just know that it's still very, very usable for a road trip. I've gone on a 3-hour road trip each way with it before. My wife and I went on a 2-hour road trip, and then there's been tons of half-hour to hour-long trips around. And I wouldn't say we've ever gotten tired of it on those longer trips. It's a small car, so you start dealing with that after a while. You can't fit a lot of luggage space, but other than that, I mean, this is extremely livable. I do bend over like this at red lights to be able to see them, depending on how far away they are. It's kind of minor, but if you're tall, you're probably used to doing this already, so it's not that much of a surprise. So let's get one pull with the top up. You probably heard me hit the clutch delay valve there. I don't like modern clutches a lot of the time with the clutch delay valves because I feel like I sound like I just learned how to drive stick. I think it's just a lot of old muscle memory, but I'm getting better with this one, or getting more familiar with it. I don't dislike it as much as the one in the GTI. But I don't know what that sounded like over the video. Probably not great, but people have talked about how the engine's a little snarlier and the exhaust is a little snarlier in the ND2, and I don't have a lot of ND1 experience, but honestly, I don't think this engine sounds very good. And you probably won't be able to hear it much with the top down, because with the top down, you really can't hear the engine at all. A better exhaust is high on my list of things to do to this car. Now, it's like my wife's car, and she's very happy with it as is, but I showed her some exhaust clips of different options, and she likes the Borla the most, and I agree. I think the Borla catback option is, or I guess it's an axle back. I think it's pretty good sounding, so that'll be on the future list of upgrades probably. But yeah, the engine just sounds kind of grainy. It sounds like our other, you hear the lane departure warnings. I think they're a little bit oversensitive, but the engine sounds a little bit grainy. It sounds like other Mazdas that we've had or that friends have had. It's not bad. It sounds like a little 4-cylinder engine, and I don't have a high opinion of most little 4-cylinder engines and how they sound. So I don't know that you should necessarily take what I have to say about that. A lot of people think these sound really, really good. So this part never gets old. I'm gonna move this mic down a little bit. I don't know how much of a difference that's gonna make. If this audio for this next part is trash, I'm sorry, and I might just talk over it a little bit because I think there's gonna be a lot of wind noise, but we'll see. So, top down, obviously I have more room than I did before. It feels great. Like most convertibles, I think the whole car transforms when you take the top down. So I'm a huge fan. So let's talk about driving characteristics. This is the first Miata I've ever driven that was stock that actually feels like it has a fun amount of power. And I've always thought Miatas were fun before, but you know, the power left a lot to be desired. But this has usable mid-range torque in 3rd and 4th gear, like actually usable torque. And you can break the tires loose going 1st to 2nd. Like, it actually feels like a revvy, decently powerful, naturally aspirated engine in a way that no Miata I've ever driven before has. To the point where a lot of people make jokes about Miatas being slow, and they've deserved those over the years, but this isn't a slow car. On paper, this is about equivalent to the GTI or the LS430. Like, and those are wildly different types of cars, but just say all that to say, like, there are plenty of cars that people think are not slow that are slower than this. And that's pretty cool. Now, would a little bit of a turbo make a difference? Sure, that'd feel great. You know, would 50 more horsepower be great? Of course it would. But do those mean you can't enjoy it as is? No, this is a super enjoyable car. It's gonna be hard to tell on video, I think, but there is a lot of wind buffeting with the RF. Like, over your shoulder, it sounds definitely loud. It sounds pretty loud compared to a soft top. So I think it's, you know, better with the top up, a little worse with the top down. Other than that, this feels like just as much of a convertible as a soft top, in my opinion. All right, handling. I'm not a real car reviewer, so I'm not gonna try to like give you all the superlatives that everybody else has said, but this is a real sports car, and this is one of the best handling cars I've ever driven, if not the best handling car I've ever driven. It's absolutely incredible, and it's so fun to drive. Like, I can tell what every corner of the car is doing at all times, and it's very confidence inspiring that I know how much, you know, I have left in the car, and I never worry about, is it gonna break loose on me, or you know, am I reaching the limits of grip, the limits of steering, limits of the suspension. Those limits are extremely high, but you always know where you're at with them. People always use the same hyperbolic ways to describe like cars like Miatas or Boxsters or Caymans or whatever when it comes to handling. So, is the steering telepathic? Sure, I guess. It's extremely good. I believe it's an electric rack, but feels great to me. This is mostly just a really light car with a great suspension, good tires, and a great engine, and that's a really good combination, but all the engineering that Mazda's put into it makes it better than most other cars that are small and light and do all these things. Like, Mazda's probably one of the best people at doing this. I'm on one of my favorite driving roads right now, and it's a road I know really, really well, so I'm not exceeding the speed limit, but I am pushing right up on it, and for some reason the speed limit's kind of high on this road for being so curvy. And the amount of fun I'm having with the Miata is significantly more than I would have with the M3 on this same road. The M3 is, of course, much quicker, sounds way better. You can't even hear the engine in this with the top down, and has loads more grip, but its limits are really high, and you have to push it hard to hit those limits on a public road, and I wouldn't do that just to be safe, but it's not very livable. You know, it's got a hard suspension and really aggressive camber and everything, and it's designed to be really good at autocross and track stuff, and it is. I have more fun driving this because this is fun and playful on a normal road under normal conditions and could still go beat most cars in an autocross, which is pretty incredible. The brakes are fine. They're not as confidence inspiring as like the steering and the suspension and everything, but it's a really light car, so I've never felt like I had anything to worry about with them. But the GTI felt like it had awesome brakes. It had the Golf R brakes because of the performance pack. And the M3 feels like it has awesome brakes. They're just the stock BMW ones. This feels like it has fine brakes. I have no real concerns or complaints about them, but they're not amazing. This trim package does have the Bilstein dampers and 280 treadwear tires. And the combination of those two, they feel great. I mean, these tires are definitely more than I would use most of the time driving on the street. So I feel no need to upgrade them. I might get slightly thicker ones, or slightly like wider tread when these ones wear out, just because I think it'll look a little bit better. But other than that, they're great. And the Bilstein dampers, I also have zero complaints about. I don't want to lower this. I know a lot of people think there's too much wheel gap. I kind of get what they're saying, but I like having the ground clearance because we live in a very hilly city, and that's something that you need frequently. So I don't feel the need to lower my stuff. It's inconvenient enough having the M3 be as low as it is. So not really something I'm looking to do. I'm probably gonna make more videos about this car when we do more stuff with it. For now, I don't know, what information would you want to know? The only real purpose of me making this is give my perspective as a tall driver, because I couldn't find enough videos that gave me that information or enough forum posts when I was shopping for this. All I could do was wait till I had the opportunity to drive one, and I figured this might be helpful. Other than that, I don't think I have anything that useful to say that you can't get from an actual car reviewer who's more qualified. But I love this thing. I think anybody who discounts Miatas probably just hasn't driven one, or hasn't driven one the way they should be driven, because this is an awesome sports car. It's a real sports car. I can't imagine that you could get much more for the money that's this. I mean, there's other cars that are more specialized for different things, which are better at them than this, obviously. But unless you want a pony car, or you want something like a BRZ specifically for track use, and you want a hardtop or whatever, I think this is one of the best sports cars that you can buy on any sort of affordable budget, brand new. And it feels like driving an old Miata. More refined, all the ergonomics are better, all the features are better. It still feels like a Miata. If I was blindfolded and sitting in this car while someone else who's not blindfolded was driving, I think I would figure out this was a Miata very, very quickly. So I think that's really impressive, and we love this thing. We plan on keeping it for a really long time.